Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very, very good afternoon. Peace be on you all, and thanks for choosing this session. We made sure it's the biggest venue, and it would have been a bit embarrassing if we just had one line of people. But thank you very much. I think it does indicate, the topic, creating employment, is an important one. In fact, I think it underpins probably the rest of the National Development Plan. Now, I'll keep my introduction very brief. It is our panelists and you, the participants, that we really want to get input from. In fact, you will feed the overall objective of the Muslim Civil Society Conference, and that's to inform, take forward whatever your input is, and those perspectives will inform the think tank going forward. That's the ASRI think tank. So I think your contribution is very, very important. But just by way of background, as I said earlier, this discussion is underpinned by the clear realization that, and this is by government and civil society, that creating employment is the key to eradicating poverty. And I think this is key to all the struggles and challenges that we face in this country. A country where the levels of inequality are probably unmatched elsewhere in the world. And there are various historical factors, but there are also current factors, perhaps, that are contributing to that, or if not contributing to that, but the levels of poverty and the differences, the differential is perhaps not being adequately addressed. And around all of this, when we talk of employment and unemployment particularly, we need to look at figures. Figures give us some idea. You get statistics and you get statistics. But and employment, there are two key statistics. One is the narrow definition of employment. That is when they do the survey and they would ask the person, within a week of the survey, have you been looking for a job? And that's the narrow definition of unemployment. And that figure stands at around 25%. But I think what really should be concerning us is the broader rate. Those who have actually given up the quest. If a job comes along, they will do the job. Or there may be someone who's just put up a stall somewhere, bought fruit from or vegetables from someone and put up a stall. Technically, that person is also unemployed. So the informal sector, as we put it, and that figure stands at 43%. So this is against, as I said, the backdrop of an unequal society, and these are alarming figures. They're not alarmist, they are alarming figures. And I think today's discussion and the esteemed panel that we have here, hopefully they would take us along a route where how do we engage with the NDP? And I think it's very important to state at the outset that the NDP is a plan. It's not necessarily the solution. We need to work around the NDP, and there may be aspects of the NDP that are really not going to be, are unable to address the issue because of a particular perspective. But that is for our panelists and the audience to talk about and to contribute. I won't go into a detailed introduction of each panelist. You have the program, the brochure, which gives enough background about the panelists. But I think I should just say a word or two about our sponsors. This particular session is sponsored by Petrocam. And Petrocam, we thank them for their generosity and the support of this particular program, and the media sponsors, and I think that's the reason I'm sitting in this chair. The media sponsors, it's Muslim Views, the newspaper of which I'm the editor. My name is Farid Sayed. So we hope that by partnering in this particular civil society contribution, conference rather, we can make a contribution as media. So first off, and I think it's protocol, as well as I think in terms of the plan coming from government, I think it's appropriate that we start off with the Premier of Gauteng, the Premier of the Gauteng Provincial Government, Mr. David Makhura.
Thank you very much, Farid, and my fellow panelists who are here. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Peace be upon you. I would like to first express my deep appreciation to the organizers of the conference for getting us together to have a conversation about the challenges we face as a country. And this conversation is very important dialogue. Obviously, the conference is organized on the basis of discussing the National Development Plan, which is our country's plan, as Farid has said correctly. In the few minutes I have been given, Farid said 5 minutes. Let me first say that the assumption I make is that you have been addressed by a number of speakers, including the Deputy President and ministers from yesterday and this morning. So there are certain basic things I will assume have been said about the National Development Plan, where it comes from, and why we need this plan, and that there's aspects of the plan that have been questioned, challenged, and in a democracy, that's the nature of a democracy. You may not, even with a national plan, you don't think that it is cast in concrete. So it's an ongoing discussion, and there may be aspects of the plan we must continue to review, and also evidence may point to the fact that what you thought you were dealing with has changed profoundly. So I wanted to start there, that there's no plan that is really cast in concrete. It must be open for discussions, and civil society played a very key role in our country in this process of developing the National Development Plan. The second point I want to make is that civil society played a very key role in bringing about democracy, but in the last 21 years, we have had this, and I want to say those of us in government sometimes act as if the government can do everything alone. The reality is that there is no change, profound change that can happen just by state action alone. You need mobilization of civil society, unleash the energies of everybody in society to get this. So the National Development Plan is our vision, and my focus is really on lower levels. National plans can be good, but they can also be problematic. Unless you get provinces and localities and communities to really elaborate and identify what they can do in pursuit of that vision, it will just remain a plan, as Farid has said, and then cast there, and it really doesn't translate into anything. So with regard to our province, in Gauteng province, we have been identifying what we need to do at a lower level to give effect to the National Development Plan, and therefore developed what we call our provincial strategy, which we call transformation, modernization, and then reindustrialization, to give effect to the National Development Plan. This provincial strategy has got 10 pillars. Deals with the state, because we need to continue as a democracy. Can't say we have a democracy. Democracy is not something you just have. You have to build it. And you have to continue to pose difficult questions. Is our democracy a democracy? So is this democratic state sufficiently democratic and capable of acting in the best interest for our people? So one aspect of our provincial plan is paying attention to the transformation of the state and building the capacity of the state to work in conjunction with communities. The other aspect of our provincial plan is to look at issues that have to do with infrastructure. Now, there's the National Infrastructure Plan and many discussions at a national level on infrastructure investment. But we know infrastructure is in localities, is in communities. So to create meaningful employment, we also have to take those infrastructure plans into provinces. So we have a massive infrastructure development plan that looks into issues of public transport, water and sanitation, energy, and what we call the township economy. So infrastructure development across the province is a critical thing. The other aspect of our plan looks at what we call spatial transformation. Because the space is the economy and the economy is the space. The reality of apartheid spatial landscape means you have economic activity in certain urban nodes, and then you have the periphery. So where black people live, and by black I mean in the most comprehensive sense, what we call townships, where the Africans, Indians, and colored people live, it's out of the economy. And the economic nodes have been built to service what the old apartheid economy. So spatial transformation also means we have to remake where industries are and take, as we build communities, we have to connect the economy with communities instead of people working, for example, in Lenasia. They live in Lenasia, they sleep in Lenasia, but they have to work out of that. So this brings me to the last point, Farid, that so spatial transformation is also linked to what we call the township economy revitalization. An area of huge potential in employment, but also huge potential in transformation, in economic transformation, to bring there's lots of economic activity happening in the townships which were designed for black people, but which we regard as critical economic nodes. They have to be turned into centers of economic excellence and thriving economic activity for employment as well as economic inclusion. So my point, therefore, is that I think the major focus of our province and municipalities is to really take the National Development Plan from a plan that's hovering over there to a plan that's get manifested at a local level across the province. And out of that, there are huge economic opportunities as well as employment creation opportunities through what we call township enterprises. And I want to therefore say that I think we also have to think of an economy afresh. An economy, the social component, what we call the social economy, rather than that, it's a big driver. This is located largely in communities. So I can come back, I think, in the course of the debate, just to elaborate the measures that we are taking in this regard. Instead of just focusing on big industries, we have to go lower down to community level.
Thank you to you, Premier. Sorry to cut you, but I think there's the points that have been left hanging probably make for very interesting discussion, and I hope you can pick up on that. From government, we move to policy experts. The NDP is really a plan, but many raise the question, is it a plan around a particular policy? Is it underpinned by a particular government economic policy? And we've had AGISA, we've had GEAR, and many believe that that is framed around neoliberalism. And that could in itself be the problem in terms of addressing the challenges that we are facing. Does the NDP center around a particular policy? And to just give us some direction, we have Mr. Pirosho Kame. He's the Director, Cooperative for Resource and Education. Cool. Mr. Kame.
Thank you very much. I don't want to get into a debate about policy, planning, and implementation, because I think the implementation will result in a set of reassessments of the plan and therefore give us further direction. But I just for a minute want to go back to what we have inherited as an apartheid legacy. So those of you who live in Johannesburg will know that whilst trading was restricted in terms of retail trade in this country, the Joburg City Council at one stage decided that all traders would move into what they termed the Oriental Plaza. They then created 120 trading licenses. So people were obliged to get in and buy those licenses and only trade in those areas. So the limit of job creation at that time was very, very limited, that sectors could not go out into the manufacturing sector, building factories, or doing the kind of incubation that they might have wanted to do in other sectors. If we turn to Soweto, Soweto 76 had like 20 shops. Soweto 76 had 5 telephones. We need to remember that to be able to understand how do we shift from that sort of digital age of 5 telephones to today's digital age of computers and laptops and iPads. So that's the problem that we are faced with, and we applaud the Premier and the vision that they have about what innovation can be applied in this province. That said, I think that we also need to understand that this has to be an inclusive plan. And I have warned my sister that, I want to talk about engaging women, engaging people with disabilities, and engaging youth in terms of youth empowerment to create those jobs. Because without that, we're creating jobs in a vacuum, and we will only be exploiting the neoliberalism paradigm, as the chair has already spoken about. So what do we need to do? We need to be able to be creative about the kinds of jobs that we create. Those jobs have to be sustainable. They can't be limited jobs like we have created with the extended public works programs. So somebody goes in there for 6 weeks, gets a little wage, and pulls out of it. We need to think through that if this city has cars going on its highways, what do we do about that? How do we engage people, and what wrong decisions have we made in 95 and 96 up to 2000 in local government to correct that? Local government at that time went out and outsourced a number of jobs. We now need to bring those jobs back in again and insource those jobs, because those insourced jobs are the ones that would ensure employable people in the future. I also want to stress that NEDLEC is now debating a national minimum wage. That's an important debate, both in terms of what community input, government input, business input can bring about in terms of a national minimum wage. All sorts of figures are being thrown about. 4,500, 3,500, government probably comes out with a smaller number. But what is a living wage? And we need to be able to debate that, and we need to reach agreement. Is a living wage in Johannesburg the same as a living wage in Springbok, where the bag of meal will cost much more because of the transport costs taking that meal to Springbok? So we need to be able to think through those issues, and we need to be able to provide answers to that. But in terms of the business people sitting around in this room, what is the minimum wage that you are willing to pay to ensure that there is a living wage? Understanding that workers have union rights, and we should entrench those rights and protect those rights. Because in protecting those union rights, we are also protecting our constitution and the struggle that we have come through. So I'll stop there and perhaps take more questions later.
Thank you very much to you, Mr. Piroshikame. And of course, I think the one question is about the sustainability of jobs. Employment, we can create thousands of jobs. And Mr. Kame referred to the extended public works program. It's a good example of jobs being created, but can they be sustainable? Talking of job creation, our next contributor, panelist, is Ms. Shamila Ghani. She is the Executive Director of the Job Creation Trust, and she knows all about creating jobs, the challenges that one faces in creating those jobs, but also by the programs that they have implemented. Maybe we can learn a thing or two about how to overcome those challenges. Ms. Shamila Ghani.
Assalamu alaikum, good afternoon. I want to start off because I think everything even job creation is affected by the economy. And we first need to assess, and if we see the stats that's come out, that through a period of, I think, the past 5 years, the economy, the growth of the economy has not created jobs. More people have shed jobs. And a lot of times, and my background is also as a trade unionist, they blame the trade union for all of this, okay? The strikes and everything else. And I'm going to come to job creation. But it's really the economy, because it's not a jobs growth economy that we're living in right now. Sorry. Yeah. And we need to see, and as a Muslim conference, we need to look at what different can we bring to the table into the NDP. And like everybody else has said, it's a framework, but we need to put the substance and the body into that framework. And this is going to be your contribution. Our contribution should be looking at the model, the Islamic model, because the economy influences jobs, right? It influences food security, and it influences every aspect of citizens of that country. Now, if you look at how do we deal with that, what determines what the inflation rate is going to be, and what determines what the interest rate is going to be? How does that affect job creation for entrepreneurs? Because you have to compete as an SME, and when we fund projects for job creation, our focus were in rural communities. They pay exactly the same, even more, for a loaf of bread, because they have to get into a taxi, drive 50 kilometers or 20 kilometers to the shop to go and buy a loaf of bread. They pay even more than you that live in the city. So it is not about a formal economy and an informal economy, because we all trade in the same economy. You pay the same price, others sometimes more. The ones that you accuse of living in the informal economy pays more than what you pay, that lives and trades in the formal economy. So that is what we need to really talk about in job creation, because the cost of a job, when we provide funding for job creation, we calculate what does it cost to create a job in the city, and what does it cost to create a job in the rural areas, where there is less infrastructure, less water. If you want to set up, for instance, if you want to set up a mall to create jobs, there's hardly any infrastructure that can lead. It needs water, it needs three-phase electricity and all of that. You then have to pay additional for that. So the cost of a job in a rural area is more, in creating a job is more than in the city. So I want to speak about that, because we need to discuss the economy is based on inflation. Remember, they did away with the gold backing of currencies and all of those things. So it's backed by inflation. Inflation is determined by interest rates. Is interest rates halal in Islam? Is interest halal in Islam? So how can an economy be successful? First of all. And then how can your job, because remember, a lot of times, how many people work in the bank? I know I worked for 20 years in the financial sector, was part of the financial sector transformation. People used to tell you, your money is not halal. Is your job still halal, or your money that you earn, or the job that you create in the current economy that you live in? We have many examples. We have public-private partnerships. I'm sorry, I want to give one example. We've set up a manufacturing factory making baby wear and supplying to the retailers. There are 400 women that were unemployed. How do you provide them with the skills to come into this and to start their own businesses, where they have to compete with the Kazakhs that has been established for many years? How do they compete with those companies? It is only the support that you provide, but also the access that government through DTI has provided to the retailers. So it is about those partnerships to create jobs. But the other aspect that we need to look at is that it is a social enterprise. No money or profit from that company goes into anybody's pocket. That is the only way we're going to do it. The loan extended to those women or to that company, there's no interest on it. It is a capital investment loan that only the capital needs to be returned. So, Shukran. Questions? Okay, later.
Okay, we'll open up for questions, and I think particularly that model of the social enterprise is something, again, the question arises, is that really something sustainable? People want to go into business for profit, but should the mindset not change? And perhaps there's hope for institutions or enterprises such as the one that you are referring to. The one area where the NDP speaks about and puts much hope in is the small to medium business enterprises. And our next panelist, Mr. Sharif Hussain, he's the Executive Director of the Migo Asset Managers. And he's had some experience in terms of what his company does and also engaging with government on that particular issue.
Thank you, Fareed. Good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for having me. When I was first approached to actually come here, I was quite reluctant, for various.
Okay, I think I'll need to leave mine on.
Okay.
Sorry.
One of the specific reasons being that I think we've always been blessed with the most wonderful policy in South Africa. I don't think those are the issues, and anything we could criticize about it could lead to a solution. And that really is a benefit, but it's also a negative. So I'd like to touch on perhaps three specific points that I think could maybe further explain why we are where we are after 20 odd years. I think the first part is, and maybe South Africa is somewhat different internationally in business for this specific reason. Big business, as a first point, comes out of apartheid. So with sanctions, it created many monopolies, or a few monopolies within each sector. So every sector in this country has 3 or 4 dominant players. Then they have their pet suppliers and producers within those dominant players. And that's how our economy is structured. Within that corporate South Africa, you need to also understand the mindset. The mindset therefore means that they need to retain market share. And when managers wake up in the morning in corporate South Africa, they have achieved saturation in the environment. So it's not about them looking for new areas, taking on more risk. It's not necessary. It's a very comfortable position they're in. I've left the corporate industry, say, 10 years ago, so maybe I'm not as well versed, but Stephen Saad wrote a very critical analysis of this 2 years ago. Actually, it was published in the Sunday Times, and he said that corporate South Africa is now made up of corporate managers. So the innovators, the people who create jobs, create new businesses, are very few and far between. And I take his view very seriously, particularly because he's built a business from nothing to being the 5th largest generic manufacturer in the world. So it strikes relevance, with me. The last point in terms of big business is the interaction with government. So government creates these policies, and big business actually does a lot to either circumvent or manage policies. And it's not a constructive relationship in one form or another. So the end point in terms of my first point being big business is I'm not sure they're the place to start in terms of finding or creating jobs. I think it's entrenched, and I perhaps think that maybe we need to manage it appropriately but not look for them for solutions. The second point is service delivery. And service delivery starts all the way from definitely policy, but right through to actual funding, to the real creating the electricity that goes into business. Now remember also when we go back to the apartheid era, the Afrikaans empowerment was built off an incredibly efficient and almost brilliant bureaucracy. And that bureaucracy created companies like Naspers, Sasol, Sanlam, and it covered really businesses or areas of business from all the way from agri right through to the most complex financial services. The basis for all policy and the bedrock for all policy to be delivered is a vibrant bureaucracy. That means having clever people doing the right things and making it easy for business people to implement. And the risk, as I said, in going back to big businesses, they have created means to almost counteract or work within the issues created by poor bureaucracy. But the SMEs, that's where the real struggle lies. Because we are the actual recipients of, or we face the consequences of that poor bureaucracy. So the last point then is the SSMEs, where I think is actually where the solution lies. There's two very important points that I think we need to reflect on, and one is from the Harvard Institute, which actually came out recently. I know we shouldn't bear too much of emphasis on it, but let's put it out there. So Harvard says that in the future, the largest growing GDPs in the world will be based on countries that produce more and produce more complicated products. And they've said that within the top 10, there's actually Tanzania, Uganda, Egypt, and Malawi that are going to be the largest GDP countries in up to year 2023. So I'm just putting that out there. Perhaps you could reflect on it and consider. The second point is in South Africa, more than 3/4 of all companies in South Africa that employ 100 or more people, they make 75% of all our companies in South Africa. So maybe I'm actually being clumsy about it. 75% of all companies in South Africa employ 100 or more people, compared to world statistics, which says, or comparative countries, where only 1/5 of companies that employ more than 100 actually employ more than 100 people. So that says we don't have a vibrant small business sector, and we need to somehow create that vibrancy. And that actually is, sorry, my last point. That actually is where we're going to find solutions to this issue.
Thank you very much to you, Sharif Hussain. Looking at particularly your final point about SSMEs, and I know the NDP does place a lot of emphasis on strengthening that particular sector. And just to tie in with that, our next panelist, Gareth Taylor, he's the incubator head at Owetu project, and perhaps not directly looking at SSMEs, but I think they're also in the area of creating jobs and sustainable jobs and learning from past experiences of others. In one of the earlier sessions, we were told that we should not imitate others, but we should at least be able to learn from others. So over to you, Gareth.
Thank you, Farid. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm not going to profess to be an expert on the National Development Plan, but what I would like to share with you today are a few of the things that we're doing to implement the National Development Plan. As we've heard last night and today, it's a plan, but what we really want to be getting out of this is how can we as civil society contribute towards implementing it. So what I'm going to share with you today is a couple of lessons and ways that we've got around some of the complexities. For us, let me just start that by saying that for us, social justice is at the heart of what we do. And it's the reason why the Owetu Project was founded in the first place. For us, it's unacceptable that individuals are, that their race, the location of their birth, and as a result, often their education level results in how successful they're going to be. And the only way that we can find a scalable, sustainable solution is to be able to address that issue, where the majority of the individuals in South Africa are not going to be successful as a result of their background. So what we've done at Owetu is try to design a platform and an institution that can address that. If I may, I'd like to use an allegory to just further paint a picture of what this means and what we need to do. We know that our economy is largely based on the success that we've had with gold and mining. Now, if we look at when gold was initially found in South Africa, we can all picture I picture like a gold rush in the States, where everyone's rushing out and panning for gold, but it's all the gold that's on the top level. But what we know is that the majority of the wealth is not on the surface. It's actually, you got to dig down for it. Now, it's going to cost a little bit more, and once you get to it, you still have to develop it, and you have to spend more money developing it and transforming it into the form that you need in order for it to make money and for you to be able to make something of it. Talent in South Africa is exactly the same as that gold. What the BEE system has done up until now, the first set of the codes, has done a great job of enabling us to really touch that first level. So for the past 21 years, we've been panning at the top. But what's great about the new codes is that it really encourages businesses to dig deeper. And that's what we need to do, except the great thing about people compared to gold is that once you've mined the gold, you can only really beneficiate it once. You can make it into a necklace or a coin, but then you can only really trade it. There's no additional value that's going to come from it. As opposed to people, if we can harness the potential of individuals, if we can develop their skills, if we can plug them into opportunities, there's no telling how much that person can add back to the economy. And that's what we're trying to do. The NDP states that 90% of the jobs between now and 2030 need to come from SMMEs. However, there are a couple of infrastructural issues that make it difficult for us to be able to do that in the short to medium term. But as I mentioned, I want to share a couple of the ways that we've overcome this. In South Africa, often we're too focused on the problems. And today, I think we really need to start focusing on what the potential solutions are and how we can implement this. So just to focus on some of the issues. Number one, as I painted in the mining allegory, the talent that we have in South Africa is not yet investable. We need to be able to make sure that these individuals are able to bridge the gap. Number two, getting businesses to bridge the formal divide is as difficult as trying to move to China, learn a new culture, and learn a new language. And we need to understand this, we need to embrace it, and we need to make sure that we're building platforms to bridge that gap. If individuals are not able to cross that informal-formal divide, they're not going to be able to raise funding that they need in order to grow their businesses. And they're not going to be able to access the formal economy, which is where a large part of the opportunities in South Africa lie as well. The third is that in South Africa, funding is incredibly difficult to raise. As Sharif was saying, it's very difficult to get to get that growth that we really need to get. And the third is that risk and reward is misaligned. Now, some of the solutions that we have in this is that we created a mechanism that doesn't have a look at what the educational background of this individual is, or what their track record is, or whether they've started a business or not. When we're looking for entrepreneurs to partner with and to start businesses, we look at their potential and the predictive behavioral traits that will enable them to be able to be successful. And we then have created a pipeline that enables those individuals to be developed through entrepreneurship and actually learning as they go. The second is that we decouple the entrepreneur from the business idea. There are three main components to a successful business: the entrepreneur, the business idea, and the capital. What we do is we have a look at finding these individuals. We identify ideas that are viable, and then we inject the capital into those businesses to make sure that we're able to then make it successful. I have just 4 more points just to sum it up. The third is that we jointly operate with the entrepreneurs. Now, because the entrepreneurs are coming from this informal background, they often don't know how the formal system works. As I mentioned, there's that culture divide. What we then do is we have entrepreneurs in residence that are able to run these businesses and get them successful. They say that more is caught than taught. So by these individuals watching an entrepreneur in residence and seeing how it's done, they're now able to see how we need to operate and what goes into running successful businesses. The fourth is that we have back office support. Now, shared services is a big expense that we have in businesses, and when it comes to formalizing economies, it's a massive expense where you've got all the compliance side and all the things that you need to do. But we can't expect entrepreneurs to have this breadth of experience going across everything that they need to do. Let's expect them to be entrepreneurs and get that one thing done right, but put infrastructure in place that enables them to do a little bit. Must I touch on the other 2 points during the discussions? Cool.
Sorry. Thank you, Gareth. And I know you've got some interesting points which hopefully will come up in the discussion. The format that I was asked to follow was to then put some key questions to the panelists. But I think I really want audience participation. So I'm going to go straight through to the audience. And I see several hands. So I'm going to make my job easier by learning from a previous session. And we tend to start from the right-hand side. So there's no bias for the right or the left. Perhaps my bias is probably more to the left, but that's something else. But what we'll do, we'll take 3 questions from this side, another 3, I see 2 hands up here, and then another 3. So on the extreme right, if you can just pass the roving mic. And can you please introduce yourself, just so that we know who we're talking to. Okay. Yeah.
Sibusiso Dludla is my name, from Deep South. I'm happy that our Premier is here today. My question is actually not emanating from what you have already said. But here in South Africa, there is a trend that is fast developing in our areas. That is, when people are not happy about our government, they happen to take the street and they go to an extent of banning libraries, banning schools, banning clinics. Now, the question to my Honorable Premier, do you have a mechanism in place in terms of keeping that in future? Because this seems to me it's continuing and nothing is happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see a hand over here. Yeah. We'll come back to those that we leave out.
Thank you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In a post-apartheid South
Can you
Africa...
just introduce yourself? Name,
sorry,
please.
my name is Rafiq Bayat. In a post-apartheid South Africa, we noticed the systematic decimation of the clothing, textile and shoe industry. And government did nothing about it. We've seen 300,000 people lose their job in that sector. But I'm rather confused. I want to know, where were the Gautrain buses manufactured? Transnet has just signed a multi-billion rand contract with... they decided billion rand contract with China. Government and multinationals that creates employment, but it's rather the SMEs that creates employment. Sweden has more than 800,000 SMEs. We need to compose a new song. Since this is a live broadcast, I make a very humble appeal to the Muslim community that we have benefited tremendously from the indigenous people of this country. They supported us in business, and we commanded a better salary because of the exploitation of our black brothers. Why is South Africa giving away its primary products and resources? Why not pursue a value-added program? And lastly, I work for the Korean government office, a country that has no resources. In 1994, when I applied for the job, the exports was in excess of $395 billion. I want to quote, as I project coordinated a book, and my colleague is here, Life of Social Justice, I want to quote, when we create a just world, we will hold hands and sing the song of universal social justice. We will let it echo in every country, every city, town, and village with our own two hands. We will change this world for the better, God willing. Shukran. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rafiq. I think there was a hand. The gentleman over there. Yeah. We'll come back to you after the third round.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. My name is Hassan and I work for an organization called SANZAF. If I could direct my question to the Premier, it would be great. And without stealing the thunder from anybody, the organization I work for is probably unique in the fact that it trains, funds, and gives mentoring and coaching to micro enterprises. We have done this for the last 10 years. We have trained over 1,000 people. We have funded close to 500 individuals with grant funding. We spent close to 40 million rand in this project. And boasting by saying that not even 10% of that funding has been administration costs. We would like to know which platforms could we meet on to see if we could replicate this system throughout the province, in Gauteng specifically, and even nationally. We have tried meeting with many government parastatals in this regard, offering our services for them to replicate the system elsewhere, but we've not achieved anything. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we move on to the next round of questions, I'll ask the panel to respond. And I think, Premier, since two of the questions have been directed to you specifically, I'll ask you to take the first bite of the cherry.
Thank you very much to the questions that have been raised. The first question has to do with service delivery protests that destroy infrastructure in our communities and what the plan is to deal with that. I think government's position is quite clear that when we're fixing one problem, we shouldn't create 1,000 more problems by destroying what we already have. And I think it is something that overall we will have to address. I am dealing with this on a daily basis. That in many areas where we have community protests, we have much more issues raised than those that result in destruction of property. But the ones that catch the news would always be where some facility has been burnt down. I haven't come across anywhere in the country, even in the communities, where this is supported. So I think all we can say on this is that I think we should educate our people more. We have established in government what we call a service delivery war room to deal with the historical problem where a community has to burn something down before government responds to basically issues. So we're working with municipalities throughout the province to have a rapid response to issues, including issues raised by business, to put in place mechanisms so that you don't have a justification for resorting to violence, basically. Because the narrative of justifying this resort to destruction of property is usually that government does not respond unless something is destroyed. And that's something that I want to make sure that we deal with in the province. There's been a lot of improvements in our response to these issues in different areas. There's a question raised by Rafik about the textile industry. Let me just say that in amongst the issues we are dealing with in Gauteng province is what we call deindustrialization. So there are many areas where certain industries have declined. The textile industry is one of them. Some is the food industry, and the steel industry in the south, in the Vaal, the mining in the West Rand. So deindustrialization has happened. The issue is substitution industries and more innovation. The industries that are driven by innovation will be required to do that. That's something that in our plan, the transformation, modernization, and reindustrialization plan we are dealing with. We have identified sectors in the Gauteng economy that are more competitive. And I must say that the textile, if you look at the national profile of the textile industry, Gauteng is not one of those places where the textile industry is more competitive. So we are investing more in the sectors of the economy in the province where we are more competitive, where we have had a history of doing well in the different parts of the province. And then others is other provinces that will look at that. And I think when we get time, we can talk about that. And lastly, I think there was a question about China, Transnet, and PRASA. One thing we are doing in the Ekurhuleni, we are revitalizing the old heavy industry and engineering industry in Ekurhuleni. PRASA, the new BRT buses for all the municipalities, including Cape Town, are actually going to be manufactured here in the Germiston area. So we are revitalizing that because there is old competitive capacity there of that industry. So in other areas we are looking at in Tshwane is the automotive industry. So we are investing in that. So we have in each area in the province we are looking at which sector is more competitive and can create more jobs, can bring more, can also help support more SMMEs and create new ones. And I want to say that we want to work with those in the spaces that are already doing something. What can we learn from those of you who are already doing this? Because government can only help catalyze. We need to learn from the private sector organizations that are in the coal phase of this. And there was a question on beneficiation. We are now setting up a beneficiation center, jewelry manufacturing at OR Tambo as part of creating what we call an erythropolis in Ekurhuleni. So South Africa has talked a lot about why don't we process our own raw materials. It's a centuries discussion. We have to start now. And our province is that we are already laying out infrastructure there to build our first jewelry manufacturing center in South Africa. We have to start because otherwise we will talk about this for the next 20 years. Somebody has to start. I think Hassan, I would really want the details of your organization to see how we can look at what you are doing. You know, let me say, having gone to all the townships in the province in the first few months in office and met about 60,000 township-based entrepreneurs, all we need, well, my view is there's a lot of potential on the ground. That government, we need to find the issue of bureaucracy. And people go and talk to government all over the place. We want a one-stop shop, one central place that especially as small enterprises know, we are not going to be sent from pillar to post, and where we can get support. So we would like to work with you. And I accept that government is it's a very frustrating affair to be sent from pillar to post.
Thank you, Premier. I think I want to pick up on one of the points that you've made about cutting out bureaucracy. And I think, Sharif, you made the point about the interaction with government is not very healthy. What we hear from the Premier are the good stories, and there are good stories, and we don't have to ignore the good stories, but I think there are other stories as well, and I think you alluded to that. Can you just speak to what the Premier said and the kind of challenges one faces when interacting with government?
I mean, just as an example, in my business, I've started an initiative in the east of Johannesburg. And effectively, just to take you a step back from that, I started my first business 10 years ago, and no one gave me a chance, including my wife. There was little hope for me to achieve anything, but I'm still standing today for various reasons, and a lot has to do with luck. And when we talk about luck, we talk effectively about the divine. So I suppose from a bureaucracy perspective, the next part, and which I suppose the one of two things that I'm particularly proud of in my business is that we've managed to transcend the I and move through how do we now contribute quite quickly. 10 years, I think, is a reasonable time. And the second business is, okay, so how do we get into something that's far more labor heavy as opposed to sitting behind a computer and making very skilled people more wealthy? And this initiative we started in the east of Johannesburg, we need now to increase it, develop it, and move to bigger facilities. So I've purchased a 20,000 square meter facility, land, which we now have to go through regulatory processes to make it become effective. I've sat on this land for a year now, dealing with submissions, pillar to post, nothing's happened. Just across where this land is an informal development or a housing community. And I look to employing from that community. I employ in this sector only people who are unskilled. I just need to ensure that they are trustworthy, that I can teach them, and they are able to develop, and they're willing to develop. So my requirements from a skill perspective is really limited, but I need access. And I think I suppose a more interesting way to put it is operational arbitrage. So we, apart from financial and efficiency, we need to move quickly, because I think SMMEs don't have the luxury of having these mass amounts in the bank, land banking facilities for years. It undermines us, it undermines our ability to progress, and it actually has a damaging impact on our psyche. And that perhaps is maybe something that one needs to touch on. South Africa, I suppose, in the entrepreneurial space, and even in this community especially, we come from entrepreneurs. That's been our strength. Okay, it's fine.
I just want to take a few more questions. And perhaps for the rest of the panel, ask Shamila to come in. And for the rest of the panel, maybe you can combine it with the other questions I'll be taking from the floor. So, Shamila.
I just wanted to answer on the clothing and textile industry, because that is where we have one of our biggest investment as a project in. And I think it's also the community, as civil society, because you chose to go into a shop that sells goods from China and Bangladesh. You choose to buy that because the job creator is the locally manufactured things. And that is where the job losses is. So we have protests to Parliament, and we blame government, but it's not government. It is the retailers. because they make the choices of buying from Bangladesh, Thailand, India, and China, not to buy local, because it's 5 rand more. So it is you as civil society to start a campaign and to force big business, retailers, to buy local, to procure local. Because we can march to Parliament for everything else, but we don't march to the corporates and the retailers to insist that they create jobs in this country. And we point fingers at government all the time. I say that because Department of Trade and Industry has looked at when you provide, especially in the clothing and textile industry, if you look at SADC, the tariffs are lowered, or you don't pay import tariffs if it's manufactured in SADC for fabric. I'm not talking about a completed garment. If you import from the East, you pay taxes on it. So we can see that there is a need and there is a big job creating opportunity if our people stand up and don't buy imported goods, even though it's a bit cheaper.
Thank you. I'll take 5 questions in this session because I think in that way we'll churn out more. I'll come back to you. I think there was a question.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. Hi everyone. I just want to fly through a few conceptual ideas that emerge from the discussions. And I have an overarching question that begs, what do we do about this? In Malaysia, I noticed they have what they call a rapid transport system. They've got a train that runs around the city and then it links out to the further outlying areas. One of the benefits that I noticed from that was that if you had a job in Johannesburg and you were living in Potchefstroom, 100 kilometers away, you could be 10 minutes away from your work. Now that kind of transport system will put away the need for building massive infrastructures of the influx of peoples into areas where there are jobs. Something to think about. It's not as simple as that, but it's something to think about. Then we have issues of lack of overarching management in government structures. I'll give you an example. In our little extension there, 2 roads needed potholes. One of the roads that needed potholes actually needed resurfacing. So as active citizens, we communicated with the local municipality and somebody came on job. They fixed the pothole and then they resurfaced the road with the potholes. And the road with the potholes is still waiting to be attended to. Now, I mean, that kind of situation is ridiculous, but it happens every other day. The background was that the shop floors were the war zones of the unions. We know that. Much of it has left scars on people in the fear to then employ. And that belligerent attitude of workers scares the entrepreneur to employ.
On hindsight, introduce yourself. I don't think.
My name is Iqbal Kolia.
Iqbal Kolia. Thank you. Move over to you. We'll take 5.
Good afternoon. My name is Nkululeko Ngubane, and I'm from Dynamic Eagle Training and Networking. My question is to the Honorable Premier. As an MME, we are presented with a problem. Just like yesterday, when one of the government agencies wanted to procure a service from us, we are still asked to comply with processes that have been taken off. The example is the BEE codes. We've got the new BEE codes that came into effect on the 1st of May. Yesterday, I was asked to government who make those laws don't understand. And how are we going to be able to create jobs if ever the policies that were meant to make things easy for us as small businesses are not understood by government? And unfortunately, if you try to address that to the employees, they don't want to listen to you. It's either do you want this job or not? So it's a bit of a problem. And I just want to find out as to what is that they are doing, government, to educate their staff, because the attitude is not good. And unfortunately, we might know more than they do, but they don't want to listen to us. I just want to to get from the Premier.
Thank you. There's a question here in front, please. Right.
Thanks. My name is Abdullah Varachia. I'm from Gibbs, the business school. So we've heard a lot of the one side of South Africa, the unemployment rate that you spoke about at 43% or 26% officially or unofficially. But there's also another part of South Africa, and it's most pronounced here in Gauteng. It's a South Africa which this week opened the largest Prada store in the world. It's a South Africa that's got the largest Porsche dealership in the world. It's a South Africa where N. Crotty, in a fantastic book around executive pay, says that executives in South Africa earned the second largest after executives in the United